Funding for The Router Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. Teardrop describes the unique leg design of this beautiful occasional table. Bob and Rick will show you how a few simple shop-made fixtures and your router can make a project like this a reality for you. Apply the finish of your choice and you have a beautiful teardrop table. Today in the Router Workshop.
This time, we're working on a teardrop table, and where it gets its name from is the teardrop that we formed in here using a 45-degree bit. We also have a vein that runs around the outside just to give it a little character in it, and that's done with a core box bit. This is a large core box bit that we have for the base, and that column in here is tapered, and we've got that started.
Yes, and I'm going to go ahead and work on the bottom pieces here, where we're tying the teardrop column into the base and to the top. So, Dad, you're going to get ready on the teardrop and show them how to use that 45-degree bit, and I'm going to go ahead and get the base pieces ready, all right?
Okay, I'll get the jig. I just got this. This is a real shop-made jig, folks, and the thing is about it, I've had it a long time. And what it is, we've locked in here this column, and the column itself is tapered, solid block of wood in it, and that's where we're going to form the teardrop, and that's the first operation. You'll also see in here where I've got this deal in here all cut out exactly the same, and what it is of both sides in here so we get this round bottom, and that's to make up the next cut, but we'll leave that for now. And also another thing I'd like to point out to you is that you'll see that the fixture itself is raised at this end, and that gives us our slope on it. So I'm going to clamp this to the bench in here so I get a little support for it. Also, when you're doing anything like it, we have to have some mode of clamping that into place. So tap that up inside of your fixture as tight as it'll go, and then we'll put a clamp on the back side here and lock it in. Now, while we've got it set up in here, we'll go to a router, and this time we're going to have a handheld, and it does have the springs in it. And I'm just going to lock this down so we can have a look at the cutter first. And on that cutter that we've got in here, it's got only two cutters to it. That is, one on either side, and it is on a 45 degree. That is that when they come across here, we get 90 degrees. Has a sharp point on it, and it's nothing more than a chamfering bit. But what we have is a depth setup in it. So I've got a fence on it, and that's the portable fence on it, and what it'll simply do is fit along the outside. And then when you come up here, I'm going to plunge down. I'm going to plunge that down in its location and then push away here. And the reason I have to push away is because of the rotation of the bit. Now, once we get one cut in it, then I can rotate it over and do the next one, and that's what we're going to start off with. Now, I've got a location, and I've set a depth, and the depth comes from this. What you do is set that bit down so that it just touches, and it's just touching down in the bottom here. That makes the taper and picks it up off the leg, and you can see how it's raised on the end in here. So we'll bring it up here and set it up. What I need to do is plug in and get some power. So we'll do that. Check to see the switch is in its off position. Pop it in here, and now I'm going to start it up. Now, we got the 4 flutes in there. Make up those teardrops. Let me just take that out here and we can just have a look at what I've got. There's what it is. See how it started? The bit just barely touched here, and then it came down. As it got deeper in the wood, of course, it expanded this. Now what we need to do is lock it up, and I need to change cutters, and I'm going to put a small Corbax bit. Sometimes the small one, when it gets under 1/4 inch, they might call them a veining bit. But what it is got a round bottom on it. I'll take this out, and we're going to take the router again and change this around. And we'll get rid of the fence. We don't need that anymore. And we'll unplug it, because we're going to change a bit in it. And we'll set that up. Let me let you look at the cutter. It is a 1/4 inch bit, and it is a spiral solid carbide, but it has a round point on it. That is, its core box right around exactly there. That's what we need to do. The other thing I need is a guide. And I'm going to use a 7/16 guide, and that'll allow that bit to run inside. The guide then can follow my pattern up and about and out again this direction. And we'll talk about direction to feed here when I get it chucked up. So let's put this bit in, and we'll tighten that down. Get it all set up here. And the next thing we need to do is install that guide, put it in, and we got a ring nut that goes on the back side of that. Always those threads are tough to get started sometimes when you get just a little bit of dust in them. Clean them up. We'll tighten it down. Make sure you tighten them finger tight. Now, we got another operation we have to do. We got these sticks in here that we rode on when we did the teardrop. So now this time we want to take them off. This one I've got so I can lift off. And it's simply got a dado in the back side that fits over the top in here. So we'll take that out of there. Now, on this side I got a screw in this board. And we'll just take this screw out of here. Now the reason for this is that I've got to ride right on this poly in here with my pattern. All we want to do with the depth is just pick up the depth of the width of the bit. So that'd be about 1/4 inch. That's what we had. So we'll turn it around here and we'll lower our pole stop. Our pole stop will down on our brass setup bar. Will give us our 1/4 inch deep. And we'll tighten that in there. And just let me check and see this for setup. Got it all set. And we're ready to go. What do I need next? I need some power. And I think I'll put one more clamp on it, just in case I put a little pressure on the side of it. And then I'll show you what we have here. And, of course, we've got to have some power. So we'll pop that in. Switch is off. Start from this end. Let me just take this out of here and just show you what I've got. Now, we've got the teardrop. There's the teardrop. We've also got the vein that ran around the outside edge. And if you notice in it, it's parallel to the outside of your taper. When you make your fixture, that's what you need to do. I'm going to continue this block around. I've got 3 more to do. And then I got the big core box to put in here, and I'll have to chuck up in it. Meantime, check with Rick over there. He's working on the base pieces.
Now that the teardrop's done, we're going to go ahead and work on the base of the teardrop table here. I'm going to flip up here where we've got a rough scalp on the first part of this. This is the first level. This is the smaller one of the 2 base pieces. And it's just rough scalped out. It's a square block of wood with 4 rough scalps on it. Now what we want to do is we want to make them all exactly the same. To do that, we're going to use the router, a guide, and a fixture. Now let's just take a quick look at the fixture first off. Basically, all we've done is taken a piece of material here and give it a round or half scalp, whatever the shape is that we're looking for. One thing that you should be sure to do when you're doing your patterns or your jigs that you're working with is make sure that you've got them exactly the way you want them first. If there's any little ripples or rough things on there that you don't like, you make sure you file on your pattern to make them exact, because whatever you do here, that transfers onto your pieces that you're going to work with. The next thing we've got on the fixture is a couple of toggle clamps that hold it in place. Now the trick here is that this block is square, and between these 2 areas is exactly what it is to make them square. So I'm just going to line this first part up into the fixture, and then we'll go back and we'll look at it again. When I'm mounting the fixture in place, all I do is make sure that the outside edges here are flush to the edges of the fixture. And the reason for that is because all we're interested in doing is making the scallops so that they match. So I'll put the 2 toggle clamps down. And now what we want to look at is the guide and the bit. The bit we've got on here is a flush trim bit, but again, the rake angle on the tool, or the shear angle on the tool, is going to give us a nice clean cut. That's why we use this particular bit. It's got a guide on the bottom. The guide's going to follow along the edge, and wherever it's been rough cut out or finished, we'll trim it right out. So now what we need to do to get started when you're making fixtures like this, make sure that you can get up against the guide before you start touching wood. All right, so we've got it, so we've got lots of clearance here before we get into having to cut some wood. All right, let's go ahead now, and again, anytime you make setups, make sure that you unplug it before you do the setups. We'll plug it in, get it ready to go, and let's go ahead and cut this. Doesn't that cut real clean here? Now, when this router turns down, let's just take a closer look at this. That gives us a nice clean scalp. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out of the fixture, I'm going to move it back, I'm going to flip it around, just 1/2 turn, pull it back in now, and again, what we have to do is we have to make them so they come up flush, toggle it back down in place, and let's make the next cut. Let's me just finish off all these cuts here and flush it back up. And there's our basic shape. Now all of the corners are exactly the same and they're ready to use and set up. I have one more here that I want to do, and again I've made the same kind of fixture here. So we'll just set these pieces aside for now and let me get the other piece that we have to cut. And I'll bring that one out here. Now the base is exactly the same, it's only a bigger piece of material. So this center piece here mounts to the bottom of the teardrop and then mounts onto the top of the base. So I'll go ahead and do the same operations. Again, the 2 toggle clamps are in the same position. Again, we have a larger scallop out of it, but we still have the same kind of setup for going ahead and cutting it out. Now that we've got the shape we're looking for, the final operation is to actually mold the edges. And I'm going to use a provincial type bit to go ahead and shape the edges here. So I'll set this down for a second. Let me change the bit and we'll get the other bit in place. Put the fixtures away. We don't need the fixture anymore now. We're going to unplug the router. And let's bring it right out of the machine. Set it up here so we can change the cutter. And once I've got this one out here, we'll take a look at what kind of cutter we're going to put into this. I'm going to get rid of the guide here. We no longer need the guide to work with either. We've already got the shape exactly the size shape that we're looking for, and they're all symmetrical. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use a bit. This is a French provincial type bit, and it's got a cove on the top, a radius on the bottom, a couple of lines in the middle, just give us a little bit of decoration. And of course it's got a bearing on the top. So we'll load that first. Tighten that down in place. Make sure we have that tight. And we're going to set it up. I like to set it up here on the top where I get a little bit of a profile line on the bottom piece. Drop it back down in place. Now that's an awful large cutter for us to go ahead and try and freehand with, because again we're working with odd shapes or irregular shapes, so we have to have something there that's going to keep us so we can be safe with it. We're using a safety guide pin. That gives us a stationary position so that when we run on that, we can go into the cutter. Next thing you want to look at is make sure that you're on the right side of the cutter. You want the carbide looking at you, and you want to be pushing on this side here, on the cutting side of the tool. You don't want it to be taken away from you. So let's get our pieces up here now. We have our larger one and our smaller one. And what's really neat about when you're freehand routing is if you get into any kind of trouble, all you have to do is move away from the cutter. The minute you move away from the cutter, you're going to be all right. Then go back to the pin and start in again. Now, we want to go ahead and follow the standard rules. We're going to go across the grain, with the grain, across the grain, and back with the grain. So let's go ahead and get started here. Plug her back in again, and let's cut it. Isn't that nice molded edge on there? Get it all finished off here. You notice when I set it up, I've got this large profile line here, and that's just the height of this bit that's been set up there so that we can get a nice even line. I'm going to go ahead and finish the next one here now. And there's the base finally finished off. All we need to do is do a little bit of sanding. I have one more piece I want to work on right now, and I'm going to bring that in, and that's the mounting plate that's going on the bottom. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and put a little cove on the bottom of that. And instead of changing the router bits, let's just use the top part of this tool. So we're going to set down here and drop down so we just have the top part of the tool showing. If you look at that carefully, you can see that I just have the cove part of the tool in place. Let me take another close look at that, and maybe I'll just raise that just a little bit. So right there, looks good. All right. Again, cross the grain, with the grain, across the grain, and back with the grain. I'm going to finish this, and then we're going to go ahead and get on to some dry fit. All right?
Round bit, but it is a little longer on either side. It has a cutter on either side of that, and it's shaped inside so we can make that nice little half moon in the bottom of it. We only need a fence then to make the space. So we'll chuck that up in the router here, and we'll need to get a wrench on that. Get that nice and depth in there just right, and we'll tighten it down. Now, how deep are we going to go? Well, what we want to do is expose that full core box in it. So we'll set it up in here so we do get it. Height doesn't really matter. You want to expose enough of it there to make it look like it's doing its job. And we'll need a couple of clamps. And we need a fence. Nice thing about a router table, folks, it doesn't matter where you put that. It's going to be straight anyway. Let me just get this set up in here. Maybe I'll turn it a little bit more this direction so you can see. Now, if you notice on the taper that I've got here, it comes up flat first and then it comes up to the taper off of it. When you cut a taper, you'll definitely have a line left in it where it is. This is a good place to hide that because that core box will mill that out. So we're going to kind of put it a little ways over top of it and cut it and yet leave something at the bottom here. So we'll just set it up over the cutter and about like that I think will be fine. Now, there's a couple of little things you might like to really have a close look at. See how it lays like that? What I need to do is have it up on that. I need to keep it on this flat surface. If it's handier for you, you could always put a little wedge piece underneath here to give you a little support. But there's no kickback. There's no kickback or pull on it. Just run it through. And when you come through, don't get too hasty of coming. Might chip out in it, but if you rotate it this direction as you come through, you'll get clean cuts in it. And it'll clean up whatever comes out the back side. So I'm going to plug this in, and we'll get some power fired up here. Going to let that run down. Now, there's the leg, people. We've got the 4 flutes on it down in here along the outside core boxing in the bottom. We got that all around and makes that nice 4 teardrops.
It's time for Router Bits, where we highlight viewer mail and projects. Our first viewer project is from Ray and Ruth of Pennsylvania and Florida. Ray and Ruth live in Pennsylvania during the summer months and travel to Florida for the winter. During their trip south, they have a group of craft shows lined up to sell their crafts. This is one of the projects they sell on their way to Florida. It's a laminated wood handsaw that has a clock mounted in the center. This photo shows the handle of the wood handsaw that uses external and internal router techniques. Our next photo shows the wave of the teeth. Ray and Ruth say this is a project suited for mass production using a router, and it's a project that sells well at craft shows. Our second project is from Clarence of Georgia. Clarence enjoys making children's toys. This is a unique toy called Tabletop Free Shot. The game utilizes a plastic picnic spoon to project the ball up, forward, and into the hoop. That is, if you're accurate. If it does not make the hoop, the ball's on a string so it's easily retrieved. Clarence says you need to route the hoop, the backboard, and the base. Add a dowel, ping pong ball, and string, and you have the perfect game for kids of all ages.
Are you ready there?
Yeah.
Great.
Got the pieces here.
Okay.
All right, we'll get the top. We're going to start with...
Got those little 4 legs, I suppose.
Yes, I got those in my pocket.
Oh, good. Let me give you...
I got enough pieces here.
You got enough pieces?
Okay, so we'll lay those 4 blocks on the bottom. And that's the feet.
Yeah, we got a little screw hole in them. We can have a look there, and that's what we set up for. You can push that one over, and I'll lay the top down. Those got to be centered out into wherever it goes, right?
Right, and that keeps it off the carpet in. Now, this has to be mounted to your post.
And we didn't drill no holes for that yet, but we got holes to drill to mount that, right?
Right.
Now, is there anything we should tell them about maybe the grain in it? Would you want to go the opposite way?
Sure.
And then it gives a little strength and stops any bowing that you might have?
Yeah, make sure we get it in the center.
And we got to center this, too.
Right.
And center the column up. Now, we'll just get that set up like that.
Now, we've got the 4 holes here. We mount her on top like that.
Aha.
And then we've got the top. All we have left is assembly. We've done all the routing.
And we need some moldings we could put on if we wanted to.
Yes. Right? Thanks for watching us today at the Router Workshop.
We'd like to hear from you. You can email us at the address on your screen. Send your comments, questions, or project ideas to the Router Workshop, Post Office Box 608, Chamberlain, South Dakota 57325. Or in Canada, the Router Workshop, Post Office Box 280, Ely, Manitoba, ROH-OHO. To learn more about the Router Workshop, visit us at the internet address on your screen. If you've ever tried building a set of stairs, you know they can be tricky. In a special two-part construction series, Bob and Rick will take you through the theory of basic stair construction and get started by routing the treads and risers. That's next time on Part 1 of Basic Stairs, right here in the Router Workshop. Funding for The Router Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. For $16.99 plus $4.99 shipping and handling, you can order Bob and Rick Rosenthal's The Router, a 130-page book which includes a plan to build the router table and bench, plus numerous tips, techniques, and educational information. Call 1-800-803-1449.